Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. It's so good to see you, sort of. it's heating season here, and I'm so jealous of the cat because there's this beautiful old worn-out wool sweater on the ledge at the back dining room, and we've got these rad covers here, and they're about this wide, and she loves to get onto that sweater and do cute cat curling up things, and I want to be that cat. Or failing that, I wish that she was just a little more friendly and would do that over on the couch where I have another like really nice cat nichey type blanket. And wouldn't it be great if she would just curl up like that on the couch beside me while I'm reading? But she doesn't. And so the book that I am bringing to you today, The Dark Queens by Shelley Pahuk, was read without a cat. This is the bloody rivalry that forged the medieval world. Now, okay, so a little background on this book. There's a book out there somewhere in the world that has to do with Queen Matilda, and I cannot remember if it was her brother Stephen or her son Stephen. Anyways, this took place in England. And so I thought that's where I was heading with this book. And I think whatever the book is, it also talks about another British queen that's not that well known, perhaps. So that's what I thought I was getting. And instead, what I got was this amazing book about Brunhilde, the foreign princess, and her sister-in-law, Fredegund, who was a lowly palace slave and worked her way up to queen. Now, these two queens commanded armies, negotiated with kings and popes. They fought a decades-long civil war against each other. With ingenuity and skill, they battled to stay alive in the game of statecraft, and in the process, laid the foundations of what would one day be Charlemagne's empire. So this was crazy. This has to do with the Franks and the Merovingians, a little bit the Lombards, and the Byzantine courts to some degree, and everybody was giving birth, and everybody's children were dying or being assassinated. Dysentery here, poison there. I think that this book does not take it does take a fair length of time to capture the whole arc of what these queens did, but the bulk of the action takes place in a fairly short period of time, and it's just, wow. Everybody's plotting and maneuvering and double-crossing, and the women were originally married to the kings, and over time, each one of them found themselves without a king. They had died off in different ways. And so they each had young sons, and so they were the regents for their different areas. And the struggle was that the previous generation had 3 sons and a bastard son, where the kingdoms were divided by. And so they're all like, fight, discontent. Like, nobody wants to be satisfied with 3/4 of Europe. They gotta go get more. And so, like, talk about greed. Anyways, they just kept fighting over cities like Tours and Paris and a few others. And did I say this? This takes place in the 580s, and a little before, a little bit after. And so these women find themselves regents of the very young sons. And so the trick is how to keep their young sons alive, as well as maybe get rid of someone else's young son. The plotting and the really, it would make an incredible miniseries. Now that I say that, it would also make an incredible TV series, the way they've got, like maybe 2 or 3 seasons where that it's just going to be X number of episodes and that's the end of that. Well, people just come and go, double cross each other. And there are a fair number of names in this. Each queen either comes from a fairly large family or has a large family. So you do have to, somewhere in the beginning, there is a little cast of characters. So you get to know, King Clothar, for instance, his different different wives and whatever children they have. The kings were pretty good at getting rid of their wives too if they didn't prove amenable. So these two women are also trying to not get done away with by their respective spouses. So fascinating stuff that's going on. There are a couple of pictures. There are no actual, like, for sure type, absolutely known 100% portraits of these two queens. But those ones you see there were done about 100 years after they lived. So this is also a period of time where women are not supposed to rule. And as the centuries go past, the succeeding kings don't want, for some reason they just don't want these women to be in positions of power. So their stories get either kind of erased or diminished. And so the chronicles that are used as first sources start to become manipulated, and as you go past, as you go through the years, they become less and less important. But then if you go back to this fellow called Gregory and a poet called Fortunatus, we have got two chronicles that take us through reasonably reliable eyewitness or close to eyewitness accounts of what was happening through there. And there are other scraps of information that came through from, let's just pretend someone from the Byzantium showed up at a court. They might write a letter back to home or to the courts. And so these kind of cross letters and manuscripts and poetry and odes and poems all kind of crisscross into a very nice little heap of fact. What Shelley Pahuk has done is one of the things that I love when a historian does not insert the maybe they did this or perhaps they did that or it's likely that they did this. I'll give a little bit of leeway on that because, you know, every so often a piece of record is missing and you can interpolate some information based on, you've got some historical fact up to this point of history, then there's a gap, but then you can pick it up and you can sort of piece the pictures together based on logic. And so for instance, during the plagues, there's a bit of lost information, but because there's a plague, you can make an assumption that the plague was causing some of these troubles, and that's why some of the documents would be lost because clerics would be dead or, you know, kids died of plague. It's fascinating. Now, I know a lot of people are from Celtic backgrounds, and this is these are my relatives. The Merovingians are my relatives. I guess they had the Holland lowlands and so on, but there really wasn't until the 9th century that those parts of the world were really being inhabited. They were just so marshy, and they had to figure out how to get the windmills going to dam and dike everything. So they're distant relatives, and the Franks and the Visigoths are sort of the next hillscape over, mountainscape over, and so it was fun. It was fun to read about my aunties and uncles. So this book was really a treat. There's a certain section that comes after Gregory and Fortunatus in their old age. I guess they would have been in their 50s or so. Both of them joined convents and not convents, monasteries, and as part of their reclusive lifestyles, no longer were doing their chronicles. So there's where we start to get into some of the interpreted perhapses and maybes, and based on sort of the chronicles that come after these queens' deaths, there are a few references backwards. So there's a fair amount of fact still going on with some supposition. I thought it was riveting. I really enjoyed. There's a few pictures every so often. I really enjoyed those. I thought that the use of information from different sources, not just Gregory and Fortunatus, was interesting. There were letters between the Queen Brunhilde and her mother, who was Queen of Spain, Gosewintha. So that was part of the data. This author has brought it together in a rip-roaring tale, but without making imposing fiction, I guess, in order for, dramatic effect. These guys were so crazy, there really wasn't any point in adding in dramatic effect. So very, very interesting section of history. I know that there's a couple of channels that specifically do group reads on history, and this would fit into that. And now, I should tell you whether she's written. Okay, also at the back, there is a really good section on bibliography, further reading, and footnotes. So, like, that much of the book is given over to the academic supports. This is not an academic book at all. I really wanted to read this book, and I have read academic books, and I know I know the difference. So this was really a treat. Now I was trying to figure out if she'd written other books. Let me find that piece of information out. She also wrote Stalin in Aruba and Genevieve in Baltimore. And it does not say whether those are fact or fiction, so I'll have to do my googly googlies. Okay, I do have a fiction book for you. So this is recommended for Nonfiction November. I totally strongly admired this book, and hope you do too. Now, I do have a fiction book, which The Skull by John Klassen. He is a Canadian writer and illustrator. And Gemma over at Spread Book Joy did a really lovely review on this book. And she showed the graphics and how they evolve over the course of the book. And it's an old tale. I'm not sure what country it arises from, but it's about a little girl who comes upon, this little one here, comes upon a house and discovers that the house is inhabited by a skull. And the skull talks to her, and he's quite concerned because the skull has its own drama as well as the little girl having run away. Her name is Otilla, and she's run away, and the skull also has a problem because it is being chased by a headless skeleton. So as the story progresses, we see things start to work out. And anyways, Gemma at Spread a Book Joy did a lovely overview of the illustrations and just very coherent. I really enjoyed it. So this is geared to young readers. It's sort of a chapter book. The printing is fairly simple. I have loved it as an adult reader. I'm giving it to my son in sin, who does not really gravitate towards anything besides science fiction or academia. I just thought, this will shake him up a little bit. I'll ask him while he's here over Christmas, have you read the book? Have you read the book? This would have been fun for Halloween kind of spooky reads sort of thing. But in our house, anyhow, at Christmas time, we give books under the tree. You get something in your stocking and you get something under the tree. And over time, the kids have said they don't really want Christmassy type children's books, but I do. And so I'm always on the hunt for books that are going to, really excite me. But they are looking for something different. So this last 2, maybe 3 years, I have looked for Christmas ghost stories. And I've spread out a little bit more. And actually, you will hear about that. Cheryl and I are going to do what we're buying for family members for Christmas books. So you will hear more about that. But I think there's a British tradition, I'm not positive, about telling and reading ghost stories around Christmas. So we've sort of picked that up. So he's going to get this spooky book. Well, that's it for me. I'm still reading nonfiction. I've got what is it called? Planta Sapiens is on my shelf now. And the other book that I'm because I have book clubs, I have already read my book club choices for November, but this one is for my my newest book club. So I'll tell you all about that towards the end of the month. So there is a little bit of fiction going on around here. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye for now.